My mom said my wife was using me. A month later, she left. With everything I owned. I am a man of 33. The morning I came home to empty shelves, the apartment sounded like a fridge and my own breath. The couch imprint was gone. The coffee machine was gone. The television was gone. Even the small rug by the door that used to catch our shoes was missing like a tooth pulled clean. A single drawer had been left open as if the room itself had forgotten to close its mouth. I stood in the doorway holding a paper bag of groceries and felt the paper give way a little under my fingers. Oranges rolled toward the hallway. I did not pick them up. I walked to the bedroom and found the closet light on with no clothes to light. My mother had said a month earlier that my wife was using me. She said it with the tired compassion of someone who believed she was telling me what I could not afford to see. She said that love should add and not subtract, and that my face had been looking subtracted for longer than a season. I told her that the first years of marriage can be heavy on one side and that anyone can look tired during a long project. She nodded the way mothers nod when they know the answer is borrowed from a speech. She said that she would be there if I ever needed to look at my life without an audience. I met Julie 3 years ago when I thought I had learned how to choose. I liked her neat lists and the way she could take a messy situation and turn it into 3 steps. She liked that I kept my promises and never arrived late to anything human. We moved in after 7 months because she said that momentum protects vulnerable things. I believed that. I signed the lease with a hand that shook from relief. She brought light into rooms that had never been painted properly. She measured curtains and raised plants like quiet flags. At first the subtraction looked like generosity. She said that she would handle the grocery budget because I always overbought. She said that she would compare insurance plans because details bored me. She said that she would manage the joinery of our life because I was better with purpose than with parts. I handed her passwords because she said that shared access keeps couples honest. I did not count how many times she used my card because she always had a reason that sounded like care. She had grown up measuring safety by the noise of a house. She told me that a home should look full to trick the world into treating it gently. She said that a big couch and soft throws and 3 kinds of lighting could make a person feel held. I worked extra hours to afford her version of held. I stopped telling myself that my version, quiet dinners and a clean sink, was enough. When the packages arrived, she would tilt her head and say that she had found a bargain and that we deserved a place that did not apologize. I agreed because I wanted to live in a room that did not look like an apology. The first time she asked for my phone to transfer money between accounts, I passed it over without pause. She said that her card had hit a daily limit and that stores sometimes punish people for being organized. She laughed and kissed my cheek in the way that lowers alarms. The second time, she said that she could not find her wallet and we were late. The third time, she said that it made more sense for everything to come from one place if we were building a life. I said yes because I had been raised to believe that trust is the expensive part of love and must be spent. I did not notice how I had begun asking for permission to make small purchases because I kept telling myself a story about teamwork. My mother watched from the edge like a person trying to respect a fence. She said once that a marriage needs 2 people watching the same fire, not one stoking while the other warms their hands. I said that Julie was under pressure and that her way of coping looked like shopping to outsiders. My mother asked gently why I had started hiding bank notifications from myself. I said that I had turned them off to reduce noise. She looked at my face the way doctors look at an X-ray and said nothing. The month before the empty room, small odd things began to happen. A store called about an order I had not placed. A delivery arrived at our neighbor's by mistake with my name on it and products I had never heard of, a luxury blender, a set of knives that could cut a shoe in half, a vacuum that maps floors like a satellite. Julie said that a friend had used my account by accident because she had once ordered from my phone, and that the returns were already in motion. I nodded because she had a spreadsheet open on her laptop with tracking numbers. I did not ask why each return had a different reason code. I started waking earlier to get to work before the day tried to own me. I used the quiet to fix things I could touch. I built a template for my team that turned confused emails into checklists. I ate oatmeal at my desk and felt competent for 30 minutes before the requests began to pile. At home I felt more like a card. I told myself that seasons end and that we were building something with the weight of worth. The week everything left, she suggested she visit her sister for a few days to clear her head. She said that we had been circling the same small arguments and that distance could change the tune. I drove her to the station and carried the bag she said was light. She texted from the train that she loved me and that I should use the time to sleep. I cooked stew and froze portions like a person preparing for winter. My mother called that Sunday and asked if I was good. I said that I was tired and that the apartment felt too loud. She said that silence is a sound and that I should listen to it. I changed the topic to work and then to football because it is easier to discuss a game than a question you cannot answer without shaking. On Wednesday, 2 letters arrived. One was from a credit card company I did not use, thanking me for increasing my limit. The second was from a rental storage facility congratulating me on my new unit and reminding me to bring a lock. I called Julie and asked about both. She said that she had handled it and I didn't need to worry. She said that organizing our finances sometimes required temporary moves. I accepted the sentence like a useless pill. My stomach felt like a room after a door slams. Friday evening, I worked late and stopped by the store for oranges, since she liked slices in her water. I carried the bag up the stairs, opened the door, and stepped into a space that had been eaten. A tape outline of our life remained where furniture used to stand. The lamp that made the room look kind was gone. The bed frame and mattress were gone. The framed photo from our small wedding had been taken off the wall and the nail left like a finger pointing at nothing. In the kitchen, only the tap and a single plate remained. It felt deliberate in a way that made my hands tremble because a messy thief steals badly. This was curated absence. A note lay on the counter with 5 lines. She wrote that she could not carry the burden of my doubts. She wrote that I had tried to control her by questioning purchases and that being with me had begun to feel like accounting. She wrote that the items she had removed were things she had chosen, and that she was reclaiming her effort. She wrote that we would be better apart and that she hoped I would learn to trust. She wrote that the keys were under the mat, as if I had been locked out of a place that no longer existed. I sat on the floor where our couch had been and called my mother. I said that the apartment looked like a mouth with all the teeth removed. She said she would come and that I should not touch anything. She arrived with a flashlight and the kind of bag that holds tissues and courage. She did not say "I told you so." She walked through the room slowly and said that we should list the missing items for the police even if the story felt like a joke. She asked to see the note. She read it and said that words can be both explanations and weapons, and that this one looked like the second kind. We filed a report with a tired officer who used the word domestic and the phrase complicated. He asked about shared accounts. He asked whose name was on which receipts. He asked whether there had been threats. I said that she had never raised a hand and had only raised a spreadsheet. He said gently that stealing in a marriage can be legal if paperwork plays along. He said I could pursue a civil matter. He said to document everything and to cancel cards. He said that I should sleep if I could. We went back to the apartment and sat at the small table that had been spared because it was ugly and heavy. My mother made tea in a pot we used for pasta because even her comfort had been packed. She asked me whether I could list what I still had that mattered. I said a job, a mother, a pair of shoes that did not hurt my feet, and my name. She said that names are everything when rooms are empty. That night, I lay on the floor on a folded blanket and stared at the ceiling. I tried to remember every time I had said yes and whether any of them had been bravery. I fell asleep hearing the fridge hum like a worker who is never asked how it is. I woke at 3 with a sentence in my head that I wrote down before it could leave: love without accountability is consent to be erased. In the morning, my mother brought a spare mattress and 2 plates. She said that survival begins with breakfast. She said that we would call the bank and freeze what we could. She said that she would drive me to the storage facility so I could ask about the unit in my name that I had not rented. We went. The clerk looked at me with the polite pity of someone who handles other people's losses for a living. He said that the unit had been emptied yesterday. He said that the person with authorization had shown a digital signature. He said they do not keep cameras on the hallway to protect privacy. He apologized with his eyes. On the drive back, my mother said that grief can be useful if you teach it a job. I asked what job grief should do. She said that grief can hold the door closed while you clean. I nodded, because cleaning was the first task I understood that day. I swept the rooms that noon and said out loud the names of things that were no longer there. It felt childish and necessary. Bed. Couch. Lamp. Photo. Kettle. Books. Rings. I called Julie once more and left a message asking where I should send the final small bills that had arrived in her name. I said that I needed an address for the return of mail. I did not ask why. I did not ask how. I did not ask if she had loved me. The questions would metabolize into something I could carry. The facts were heavy enough. At work, I told my manager that I needed a day. He said to take 2. I walked to a small bank branch and spoke to a clerk who had the soft voice of someone who knows very old people by name. She helped me rebuild access to my own accounts. She printed statements that told a story in numbers. The story did not include my consent as often as I had believed. Transfers had multiplied in the last months with notes that sounded like errands. A pattern appeared like a bruise under a sleeve. That evening, my mother stayed until I fell asleep and then went home. She hugged me in the doorway and said that the second month would feel worse in a new way because the shock would stop numbing. She said that she would return tomorrow morning with a list and a mop. She said that we would start with the bathroom because small clean places make big messes feel less powerful. I believed her because she had never asked me to believe anything she was not willing to do with me. I slept badly again but woke with a to-do that could be done: cancel, list, breathe, eat, work. Each verb felt like a small nail I could hammer into a frame that might hold. My mother arrived with coffee in a thermos and a new light bulb because one had gone out. We changed it together in the quiet way people do tasks when words would only spill. The room told the truth under the new light. It was less forgiving and somehow kinder. I began writing a timeline from the first shared password to the last delivery. The line between help and control looked thinner on paper and thicker in hindsight. I recorded what I could without screaming. I asked God to let me tell the story without making myself the hero or the fool. I wanted accuracy more than revenge. My mother read over my shoulder and said that accuracy is dignity's language. At noon, my phone buzzed with a message from a number I did not recognize. It was a courier asking if someone would be home to sign for a package addressed to Julie. I said yes. I waited by the door like a person expecting a clue. A man handed me a box that sounded like parts when it moved. Inside, there was a kitchen faucet with a receipt from a store across town and an order note with my email address. I called the store and asked to cancel. They said the return had to be processed by the original purchaser. I hung up and felt the edge of panic again. It was not the faucet. It was the feeling that even the future wanted my signature. I went downstairs and sat on the steps. A neighbor nodded and asked if we were moving. I said that we had already moved, only I had not known it that morning. He made a sound that meant sympathy without prying. He offered a spare chair. I accepted because it felt symbolic to sit on something that wasn't the floor. That night, I ate soup with my mother and made 2 decisions. The first was to refuse to become a person who hates a whole gender because one person took everything that could be carried. The second was to listen to warnings delivered without malice by people who love me, even if they sound like fear. I sent a message to Julie with a line about forwarding her mail and a request for an address. I ended with a sentence that tasted like cold metal: "Please remove my email from any orders you make." She replied 2 hours later with a new address and a final grace note that cut like a wire. She wrote that she wished me the best and that she hoped I would one day understand that money is a language and that I had refused to learn it, so she had to speak it alone. I turned the screen face down and washed the single plate we had left. I dried it and set it on the table like a small flag. I went to bed on the spare mattress and listened again to the fridge. I thought about my mother's sentence from a month ago, the one I had rejected. She had said my wife was using me. I had said she was wrong. The room did not say I told you so. It just held the truth bigger than both of us: usage is not love, and absence is a form of punctuation. I slept, not well, but honestly. The day after the package, the apartment stopped feeling like a crime scene and started feeling like a project. My mother arrived with a notebook and wrote 3 headings on a page: money, things, people. She said that losses move in these 3 circles and that if I sorted them, I might breathe. Under money, we listed accounts, limits, and freezes. Under things, we wrote what was gone and what was needed to live without borrowing. Under people, we wrote who would be allowed to know details and who would get only the weather. I started with money. The bank agreed to investigate the transfers that had not been authorized by me, though the clerk cautioned that shared access always muddies water. A credit card company canceled a card I had never touched and told me that I might still be liable because the application contained a digital signature that looked like mine. A lawyer at a low-cost clinic told me in plain terms that the fastest path to dignity might be to stop chasing items and to make a clean break on paper. He said that I could spend months trying to reverse what had been done, or I could choose the next room and build it correctly. He did not push. He offered context like a map. Under things, the list was blunt. Bed. Lamp. Plates. Towels. A kettle. A second chair. A cabinet lock for the drawer that would now hold my papers. A small safe for the envelope with my passport and the title to the car that had somehow escaped the migration. My mother insisted on 2 pillows because she said that 1 pillow is for survival and 2 are for a person. She bought one of them with her own money and said that I could pay her back whenever I wanted, which we both knew meant never. Under people, I chose 3, my mother, my older cousin Sammy, and my manager. Everyone else got weather reports. Sammy came that evening with a toolbox and a kind face. He installed the cabinet lock and fixed a window latch that had annoyed me for a year. He said that practical tasks calm men who have been blindsided. He told me about his own ruin years ago when a business partner drained an account and vanished. He said that the first month feels like drowning and the second like living with wet clothes. He said that by the 3rd you start to like the way air tastes again. I believed him because his eyes did not perform. Work helped by not asking for theater. My manager gave me a project I could knit back together with patience instead of sprinting. He said he trusted my pace and that the output always justified it. The sentence felt like a handrail. I built a system to track subscriptions so the company would stop paying for tools it didn't use. I cleaned data like someone scrubbing a floor no guest will ever see. Accuracy replaced anger 1 cell at a time. At night, the apartment sounded less accusatory. The spare lamp made a small lake of light that I could move around depending on what I was trying to fix. I bought a cheap bookshelf and placed the few books I had left upright like men standing after a fall. I put my mother's second pillow on the bed and slept deeper than the first week. I still woke at 3 sometimes and reached for something that was no longer there, but the reaching no longer broke me, it just told me where it hurt. Julie's mail trickled in and then stopped. I forwarded what I should and returned the rest marked, "Not at this address." She sent 2 messages in that month. The first said that she would send someone to pick up a box of clothes she had forgotten. There were no clothes. The second said that I had been cruel in the end and that I had chosen my mother over my wife. I did not reply because cruelty had been measured in transactions, not in words, and because my mother had not asked me to choose her. She had asked me to choose myself. My mother invited me to dinner every Sunday. She fed me dishes that sounded like childhood and asked me nothing until dessert, when she would ask one careful question like a doctor checking a wound. She never used Julie's name. She called her, your wife, until the paperwork said otherwise. She said that names are heavy and should be lifted only when necessary. She told me stories from a life before me that she had never shared because she had assumed I would not need them. She said that her own mother had once warned her about a man who believed women were extensions of his wallet, and that she had learned to recognize love that looks like possession. She said that she had seen the shape around me and had tried to point to it without shaming my eyes. I thanked her. She said that thanks is not necessary because warnings from mothers are like weather alerts, you ignore them if you want, but the rain will arrive either way. The first real test came when a debt collector called about a balance left on a furniture store account opened in my name. The man used a tone designed to make people confess. I asked for documentation. He sent a PDF. The signature was a copy of my own from a car rental agreement 3 years earlier. I recognized the angled Y. My stomach went cold in a familiar way. I took the document to the clinic lawyer, who said calmly that this was not the first time he had seen an old signature recycled. He said we could challenge it and that it would take letters and time. I wrote the letters. I saved copies. I learned to live with the slowness of the world correcting itself. Sammy dragged me to a boxing gym on a Saturday because he said that hitting air is better than hitting walls. I did not want to go, but the body can help the mind when the mind has read all the instructions it can stand. I punched badly for 10 minutes and then less badly for 10 more. I slept that night without the 3 a.m. adrenaline spike. I added the gym to my list of things and paid the small fee in cash that felt clean. 2 weeks after the empty room day, I opened my email to find a message from Julie's new address. She wrote that she missed the way I listened and that she wanted to talk about a path to closure. She wrote that she had not meant to hurt me and that she had needed to protect herself from scarcity. She wrote that my mother had poisoned me against her and that I had allowed it. She wrote that if I could forgive, we might find a way to reset. I stared at the screen until the words stopped vibrating. Then I wrote back 4 lines, I wish you peace. I will not meet. Forwarding address confirmed. Please do not use my email or name for purchases. I pressed send and closed the laptop like a lid. My hands shook for 5 minutes and then were steady. My mother asked that night if I had heard from her. I said yes. She nodded without asking what was inside the yes. She told me to drink water and to put the phone in another room. She said that some screens act like magnets that pull us back into bad weather. I slept with the phone in the kitchen and felt my chest loosen a little. 1 month after the empty room, I stood in a space that looked different in a way that did not require money to measure. The new bed frame was cheap, but honest. The chair from the neighbor had been sanded and oiled and looked like it had decided to trust me. The bookshelf held more titles because Sammy had dropped off books about repair and a neighbor had left 2 novels outside a door with a note that said, for the guy upstairs who looks like he reads. I made tea in a kettle my mother insisted on buying for me because she said men deserve kettles they didn't inherit from accidents. On that same day, the company where I worked announced a reorg in a meeting where managers try to sell fear as opportunity. I watched the faces and realized I no longer needed their room to raise my pulse. After the meeting, my manager pulled me aside and said that he knew my month had been heavy. He said that if I wanted a letter of reference to make choices easier, he would write one. He said that if I wanted to stay, he would advocate for my raise. He said that I had become the person who makes chaos less profitable. The sentence made me smile for the first time that day without effort. Julie reached out one last time with an apology shaped like a verdict. She wrote that I had failed to be generous with my trust, and that I had forced her to become hard to survive. She said that I owed her for the years she had invested in making our place look like a life. She said she would be in touch about belongings she believed were still hers. I forwarded the email to the clinic lawyer and archived it. My heart did not race. It moved slowly like a person climbing stairs and not caring how long it took. The papers finalized after another month of slow stamps and quiet signatures. The law called it dissolution. My mother called it a door closing with a gentle latch. I paid what I had to pay. I released what I could not retrieve. I kept my name. I learned to love receipts, not as exhibits in a trial, but as records of choices I made on purpose. I do not hate Julie. I do not excuse her either. I think she learned early that taking feels safer than asking. I learned early that giving buys peace. Together we built a room where taking looked like love and giving looked like proof. It took an empty apartment to make that sentence obvious. I wish I had learned sooner. I wish I had listened quicker. I am grateful I listened at all. Sometimes I sit with my mother on her small balcony while she waters plants that refuse drama. She says that the hardest thing about warning someone you love is living long enough to watch them forgive you for being right. I tell her that she was not trying to be right, she was trying to keep me whole. She shrugs and says that mothers care less about credit than about seeing their children sleep. Then she tells me to eat more because grief burns calories like fire. I keep the faucet box in a closet as a private museum piece to remind me that not every package deserves my signature. On rough days I open it, look at the useless gleam, and close it again. On good days I forget it is there. Both kinds of days feel honest. When people ask what happened, I give them weather. I say there was a storm. I say the windows held. I say the roof is new. If they push, I say the sentence that costs the right amount to say. My mom told me she was using me. 1 month later my wife left with everything. The person listening usually winces in a way that tells me they recognize the shape of a loss from their own life. Then we change the subject to repairs, which is the only subject worth staying in. I wake early now without an alarm. I make coffee in a kettle I chose. I write down numbers I can verify and plans I can change without asking permission. I lock the drawer that holds my papers and thank the person who installed the latch. I open the window and let air in. The room smells like soap and something I am learning to name as calm. I go to work and fix small things that matter. I come home to a place that is not full, but it is mine. It is not impressive, but it holds. I sit on the neighbor's chair and read by the spare lamp. At night I turn off the light and let the room be dark without fear. In the morning, I wake to the sound of a fridge humming like a promise kept. I am not the man I was when my mother warned me. I am slower to hand over keys. I am quicker to read the fine print. I am kinder to myself in ways that do not require gifts other people can take. I keep receipts and boundaries and a spare pillow for guests who stay in my life for the right reasons. I no longer confuse usage with love. I no longer mistake a full room for a full heart. When I think about Julie, I wish her distance from the hunger that made taking feel like breathing. I wish her a room she can afford without writing someone else's name on the box. I wish her a morning where the only thing she needs to carry is her own day. And I wish myself the same, which, one quiet morning at a time, is exactly what I am learning to do.
Follow me for more stories.